Hey friends, if you use containers in Kubernetes, are you also backing up your container workloads? Now there's a backup solution for Azure Kubernetes Service and its workloads using Azure Backup. Steve Buchanan and Rajat Shrivastava are here to show me how it works today on Azure Friday. Hey friends, I'm Scott Hanselman and it's Azure Friday. I'm here with Steve and Rajat. How are you doing, Steve?
Doing great. Doing great.
Cool. Rajat, thank you for joining us. So, Steve, uh, containerized workloads. I do stuff in containers and I put things in AKS and Azure Kubernetes Service. And I like containers. They're great because they're stateless. You can bring them up, bring them down. Everything's cool. Why am I backing up stuff that has no real state?
Yeah, so that's a common question, right? Like, why would I back up Kubernetes workloads if it's stateless? Let me take a quick step back. So we're seeing more and more stateful workloads land on Kubernetes and AKS specifically. So that's a big reason right there to utilize AKS backup. Now with the stateless, you might be thinking, I have pipelines, I have things like GitOps. Why would I back it up? There's a lot of reasons, right? Can you take the pipeline and get your AKS cluster configuration from 2 weeks ago, a month ago, 2 hours ago, or is it going to be completely different? Maybe you need to go back in time, or maybe you're interested in object level like restores, right? Can I get that namespace, or maybe just that pod, or a secret, or a config map, things like that. And then the other big one, if you are using GitOps, are you backing up Argo CD? Are you backing up Flux? Are you backing up those technologies that are powering your GitOps, right?
Yeah, I see Rajat is nodding his head as well. You agree that this is one of those things where I'm oversimplifying things. There's, in fact, a lot of stuff to back up.
Yeah, I mean, in a stateless scenario itself, as in case, a customer goes through a lot of application changes on a daily, hourly, weekly basis as per the application that they're running. So it becomes very important for them to know at a point in time what was the application configuration. Not every day and every time when an outage happened, you cannot just go back to quickly to a Git repository, identify what needs to be done. And it also needs a lot of DevOps practices inbuilt within the organization to be very cautious around their Git actions that they perform on a regular basis. So a lot of time they just do hot fixes in the clusters directly, and then they're not awareness of the what's the application configuration was at a point in time. So backup again comes in very handy in stateless scenarios for customers, as in case the need comes in.
Interesting. So it sounds like, Steve, it is definitely something that is overlooked, and people may not even be thinking about this. Like, there's an accident waiting to happen here, Steve, and I'm not ready for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, when we think about like GitOps or those pipelines, the first thing you should ask is, okay, I have these pipelines or I have this GitOps in place. Can I fully recover this cluster? Like, can I fully recover these applications? Or maybe something happened to your cluster and you need to migrate to another one. Can I point those pipelines or that GitOps at a new cluster? Is everything going to come back? And ask yourself, like, have I tested that? Does it actually work? And if you haven't done that, recommend you do that. And if everything works, great. But chances are you might run into some issues. I like to use the analogy of like GitOps is like seatbelts in a car, and Kubernetes backup is like having airbags, right? So we all know we have seatbelts in cars. We've had it for a long time. They help keep us in place, right? So from a GitOps perspective, it's kind of like you have that desired state. So those things are in place in your cluster. But what happens if disaster strikes? Or in a car scenario, you get in that big collision, right? Now those airbags go off, and so you have like double the protection. And so you could think of like Kubernetes backup in the same way. It's giving you an additional layer of protection in case there's a disaster or some sort of major incident.
There's an old backup joke. I'm sure you probably say in your organization, which is backups always succeed. It's restores that fail. Right? There's a lot of people who are blindly checking the box that says backup, everything's going to work, and then they get a little notification once a week, the backup succeeded, but they have no real true disaster recovery. proof that any of this really worked. Is this hard to set up, and how can I confirm that these restores are actually going to succeed?
It's actually relatively easy to set up the AKS backup, and then it's highly recommended to do the test restores, and you can do that. And you don't have to restore to the same cluster you did the backup on. You could actually spin up like a test cluster or dev cluster, restore to that, and make sure that the restores actually happen. And actually, we're going to jump into a demo and we can show what this looks like.
Okay, so here's an AKS cluster that I have in place, and I'm going to back it up. So as Steve mentioned, the first thing as part is how easy it is to install and enable backup for an AKS cluster. So backup, it gets enabled by a simple extension. It's an application that you install as any other application in AKS clusters. It gets installed under this namespace called data protection-Microsoft. And that's where the magic happens for backup. Once you get it installed, it's a one-click installation that you need to do. And with that, you can start protecting your AKS clusters. Now, the best thing that you have is that the backup is available within your AKS portal in itself. So anytime you have a cluster, you want to enable backup, just go boom to the settings and there's a backup button and you can start protecting your clusters as in case. So now what I'll do is that I have a WordPress app deployed in this. It's under a particular namespace. I'm going to start backing it up, and we'll go through the journey of what particular actions that needs to be taken, what kind of a schedule and retention that you can set it up around this part. So now I've clicked on backup, I've started the journey. So the first thing that you need to do is to have a backup vault. Backup vault is the management plane which interacts with your AKS cluster and performs different operations around scheduling backups, deleting older backups that has been created once they have gone through their retention durations that you have defined, and other management overheads that are there. So I'm going to select the vault that I have. Okay. Okay, so we click on a validation. Now, a key thing to note, AKS backup works with any kind of a cluster that you have. So it works with your public clusters, it works with private clusters, clusters that are configured to be accessible to certain IPs. So you have a complete coverage of any kind of an AKS cluster that you have. I'll move forward. Now, here comes the part of a backup policy. What's a backup policy? The idea behind is that you need to define the schedule on what occasions and what frequencies your backup should happen. And then when a backup gets created, how long it should be retained. So in this scenario, I already have a backup policy created. Here, the backup frequency is for every 4 hours. So every 4th hour, a backup will be taken for your cluster. You can have more frequencies available. You have 4, 6, 8, 12, and a daily backup is an option available as per the need of your application is and the RPO RTO requirements that you have. After that comes in the retention rules. Here you define how long you want to retain a recovery point or a backup that you have created. So in this policy, you can see I'm retaining backups for only 2 days. Okay. Now, AKS backup is a good quality. We provide you 2 different kinds of backups that you can have. One is a very simple snapshot based backup in which we take the snapshots of your clusters and the state volumes that you have within them and retain them within your tenant. But a key thing to note about backups is that if you are storing them within your tenant, you are still vulnerable to any kind of a compromise that could happen on your subscription or a malicious actor coming in and deleting those backup data. So we're also introducing something called a vault storage. The idea behind is that your backup data gets moved offsite. When I say offsite, it's moved across from your tenant to a different tenant that's a Microsoft tenant. What it does is that it makes it much more secured. Even if your tenant goes out, your backups are still safe. You can bring up your backups and recreate your applications as it is when such situations occurs. In addition to that, it comes with ransomware protection too. So any ransomware attack happens, your backups are still safe. At any point of a time, you can bring back them up with the new infra that you get. Moving forward.
And one quick thought. So I've seen, typically in the VM world, but I've seen like smaller hosters save an entire data center after they were hacked and held by ransom by an offsite backup. And so it's amazing that you'll be able to have that for your Kubernetes cluster as well.
Yeah, and it sounds like on this page that Rajat's on right now that you could add linked data sources, which really ultimately does start saving everything. So you can pick as many resources or not as you choose to.
Yes, that's the beauty of this whole thing. So in your AKS clusters, you would have a lot of applications and resources deployed in it. And it's not necessary that you want to protect everything. And there is an additional scenario which is now becoming much more and more common in large enterprises, is something called a shared cluster scenario. You are running multiple applications from different departments in a huge AKS, huge Kubernetes clusters that you're running in. Each application would have its own requirements around backup. A certain application would just need a daily backup, other might need 4 hourly backups, lower than that. So that's the beauty comes in, where you can actually select what particular resources that you want to back up at a point in time. So from here, if I start, you can just click on add, and that's where the journey starts. And name it. This is a backup instance name that you can name it. Then from, as I talked about, the idea of picking and choosing the applications that you want to back up, the step one of it is selecting the namespaces that you want to protect. One of the good features that we provide is future proofing your backup. So your application is going to scale, it's going to get updated, you're going to add new resources within it, and it could lead to new namespaces getting created. Namespaces in Kubernetes world is a logical boundary for an application or a set of resources that you create. So imagine a scenario at a point in time in a year, you have 5 namespaces completely running an application. But down the line in next 1 year, you introduced 2 to 3 namespaces, which contains different new application components. And you don't need to get into the situation where you keep on going back and reprotecting them, creating new backups for those new namespaces. No, we just give you a simple feature. You can click on this, you can opt for this all, which includes all future namespaces. So at any point of a time, if a new feature namespace gets created, it will automatically be protected or backed up for you. In that case, if you don't want that, you would have an option to choose from the list. So you can pick up what you want to protect and select it out. So let's say I just want to protect this WordPress app that I have.
This is a classic problem in backups. I've done this myself where I back up just the folders and then I add some more at the root. Same kind of thing, except in this case, logical namespaces. So everything now and forever seems like the choice for me, but I hear what you're saying. So you picked WordPress app as your namespace. You start that process. It gets backed up. I'm sure that'll take some time to do that backup.
Yeah, it might take some time. So what I'm intentionally trying to do is that I'll go through the journey of what options that are available in terms of while you're predicting an application. But I already have a backup instance in place, which I'll utilize to perform a restore operation for you guys. Okay. Quickly jumping into what more granular filters that you have, because Kubernetes comes with multiple more things in defining resources. So you have something like labels also in place. These are very simple labels that you put in that, okay, this particular resources belong to a production environment or it belongs to a web app. So you can utilize key value pairs to define those labels. You can even do that. So you can go much more deeper when you're trying to define what you want to protect. Other than that, you can also protect your secrets. So if you are running some databases, you have stored the keys for the databases inside secrets, you can protect them. Cluster scope resources, there are a variety of resources that are deployed in a Kubernetes cluster. You can have those options available to pick and choose it.
It's
yes.
Sorry, something I want to call out there too, as far as your secrets. So let's say if you're using Argo CD for GitOps again, right? Your desired state, why do I need backup? Well, typically when in Argo CD, you don't store secrets in Argo CD, right? You store them somewhere else. So that's not necessarily a part of your desired state through Argo CD. So this is giving you the capability to go ahead and back up those secrets, make life easier for you.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve.
All right.
And one final thing that we have introduced is specifically called backup hooks. And the idea behind is that if you're running a database, you would want to have application. There's a concept of snapshots, crash consistent snapshots and application consistent snapshots. So if you want to take an application consistent snapshot, which is very key for running databases in your clusters, So you can just write some custom commands, deploy them as hooks, and AKS backup run those hooks for you, so you can have app consistent backup. In a very simple idea, you're running a Postgres database, you want to take an app consistent snapshot of it. You will freeze the database, take a snapshot, unfreeze it, and keep on the process running. AKS backup enables that for you. So this is a key demand around application consistency for databases, and that gets enabled also for you in this part. With this, all the end-to-end filters and capabilities that you get around backup, which allows you to pick and choose specific resources and perform certain actions, can be done in this backup configuration. You can just simply define that here. Once defined that, you just need to provide a resource group. In case you are storing persistent volumes, you take snapshots. Those are Azure disk-based persistent volumes. So you want to store those snapshots somewhere. So you need to provide a resource group. Then you can run a validate operation. And once the validation becomes successful, then you can go ahead and perform a backup. Now here's a rule assignment not done, but I'll jump into, I already have a backup created, so I'll utilize it to perform a restore operations in this case.
Okay, so we fast forward in time here a little bit, and now the backup's done. And to my point before, it's restores that people don't usually try out.
Yeah. So here is a backup that I have already created. I'll open it up, and you can see all the details that are related to the backup are already in place, where the backups are stored, the store resource group, where the snapshots are stored, all those details are available already in place. So these are all the recovery points that I have in place. I'm going to pick them up and start performing restore. I'm just going to click on restore. Now you can select a restore point directly from here. Also, you will get to see all the recovery points or restore points already in place. You can pick them up as per your needs. I'm just going to pick up the latest one that I have. Now, you have option to restore to original cluster also. You have option to restore to an alternate cluster also. And you have also option to restore to a cluster in a different subscription altogether. The key benefit of all these three scenarios is that if you are restoring to an original cluster, you might have deleted your application in a certain components of it. So you want to bring them back up. You have an option to do it in your original cluster. You can go and do it in an alternate cluster. You might want to, basically your original went down, so you want to recreate your application in the alternate one. You can do that, or you can do cross subscription. You have a cluster running in a different subscription altogether. You want to do that. You might be decommissioning a particular subscription and want to move all your applications from one to a new one. So you can simply do that from this dashboard. Here, I'm just going to do it restore to the original cluster itself. Now, this is where comes in the restore configurations. As in case I showed you backup configurations, you have the similar level of filtering capabilities with restoration also. So right now I already have one namespace, but in case you had multiple namespace backed up, you can still pick and choose which particular namespace that you want to restore from your backup. So you still have that level of filtering, continuing the same idea around labels and EPA and other granular filters. You still have them in place in here. So again, you have a particular namespace, you deleted a particular resource from your cluster, which has a certain label. I just want to restore that one particular file. I can even do that. So you can go to that level of filtering in case.
That's nice. It's very surgical, right? You can go and you have a complete backup, as you pointed out during the backup portion, but you can do surgical restores if needed.
Yeah. And a beauty of it, just to highlight again, is that from the initial stage, when you start the restore process, you can do everything that you have backed up, you can restore. So you, even in case you don't want to get into the nitty-gritties also, we get you prepared that everything that got backed up can get easily restored. But if you still want to get into the nitty-gritties of it and use the filters, you can go into the resource portion and get into depth of it. Right. Then comes in a key feature that we brought in. This is related to application migration. So you are running your app in a namespace called, let's say, e-commerce. You're trying to move it, all the resources in that namespace, to a new one called shopping cart. It's a very key or very simple thing that usually happens in application migration scenarios, where you're trying to move all your resources from one namespace to a newer one. While performing restore, you can even do that. So you can select, I have a particular namespace, I can type it up, a new namespace, in here, and all the backed up resources will be restored in this new namespace. Then there's a conflict handling in case there are, if you're trying to do an original cluster restore, there's some conflict happens between resources. You have an option of skipping the restore or updating those components. So you still have that level of options. And then finally, the idea of hooks that we had during backup comes in back in case of restore also. So after performing a restore, you want to, let's say, do a health check on your database or something like that. You can write a hook, deploy it, and backup will run it for you.
Very cool. So all of this is easy. You hit validate. You can go and determine whether or not that's going to work. It'll give you any warnings, any of the conflicts. It's going to run that whole engine to let us know whether or not that backup is likely to restore successfully, or if there's any permissions or any issues that we might need to validate within this context. Everything from the target cluster itself, the resource group, and the storage count that is backing all of that. So that validation's happening right now. And then you actually then pull the trigger on the restore, and then it'll go and happen.
Yeah. Another thing that I want to highlight within purview of AKS backup. Although I had done the entire operation from the perspective of a single cluster, but usually as a customer, I won't be running a single cluster. I would have hundreds of clusters running different applications. And if I'm a cloud admin, I would like to have a single pane of glass view. So we have something called a backup center or Azure Business Continuity Center. We can just go in and see across your tenant what level of clusters that are already there, what's the state of their backup, are they running fine, or are you seeing any failures, are you seeing any clusters which are not protected. You can have that end-to-end level of detail which is needed when you're doing a multi-cluster level management. So that also comes in handy. So you're just not focusing on your single cluster, you can focus on the entire estate that you have. I'll show it to you once I'll start the restore process. So here I've started the restore, the validation completed successfully, and the restore operation has started.
So essentially that's it, right? That's a pretty seamless experience, kind of showing the details of being able to back up and restore at a granular level. And so it's really easy to get started with AKS backup and expand to that enterprise level.
Very cool. So then getting started pages are available on learn.microsoft.com. You just go right there, look for backup, Azure Kubernetes Service with Azure Backup. It'll walk you through the entire process, and everything that Rajat just showed us, you can do as well. Folks that are using AKS can do this like right now and sign up. Is that correct?
Yeah.
All right. I am learning all about the backup solution for AKS and its workloads using Azure Backup today on Azure Friday. Hey, thanks for watching this episode of Azure Friday. Now I need you to like it, comment on it, tell your friends, retweet it. Watch more Azure Friday.